Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristen Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. I am Patti Callahan Henry.
I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey.
And this is Friends and Fiction. We are 4 New York Times bestselling authors, 2 of us tonight. Well, and Christina when she joins us, who gather every week. We pull back the curtain on the writing life and we talk about the books you'll cancel all of your plans to read.
In addition to this web show, we have a Facebook group of more than 330,000 members, a YouTube channel, a podcast, an Instagram feed, a separate book club, and a killer newsletter on Substack. We are a book community like no other.
We love the story behind the story and talking about the moment when a book grabs you and won't let you go. And we are here tonight, just like we have been every single Wednesday night for the past 6 years, to do just that.
You can find out more about us and all we have to offer at friendsandfiction.com.
Tonight, we are so excited to go behind the pages of the new novel, The Foursome, with our friend and author, Christina Baker Kline. We'll be talking about family legacies, history, and how we decide what goes on the page as writers. I know. Christina is a #1 New York Times bestselling author of several novels, including Orphan Train, The Exiles, and her latest, Please Don't Lie, which was co-authored with Ann Burt. Christina is, let's just say it, a phenom, and published in more than 40 countries.
She's won more awards than we can list this evening and still have time to interview her, but she was born. So just know if there's an award, she's probably won it.
Exactly.
She was born in Cambridge, England, and raised there as well as in the American South and Maine. She's a graduate of Yale, Cambridge, and the University of Virginia, where she was a Henry Hoynes Fellow in fiction writing. She has taught at Yale, NYU, UVA, Drew, and Fordham, where she served as writer in residence.
Kind of a slacker.
But
I know. She used to get some stuff on her resume.
I know.
She is the recipient of numerous other awards, including the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation and Writer in Residence Fellowships. Right now, she is a resident of New York City and Southwest Harbor, Maine. She is married to the darling and fun David Kline and has 3 sons. But above all, she is the most generous literary citizen I know. Warm, kind, and whip smart.
Her new book, The Foursome, which I am so excited about, will be released on May 12th. And it's the book we're here to talk about today.
You know, you being a North Carolina girl, this book probably hit home pretty good for you.
Like the minute that you told me she was writing this book, I was like, yes. Like for my entire life, I've been like, why are we not hearing more about these people? I mean, it's just the most fascinating story. So I'm so excited.
I know. So before we get rolling, because both of us can't wait to talk to Christina, there's a few housekeeping items that we need to talk about. Among all the amazing things we do at Friends and Fiction, we want to make sure you're not missing out on our newsletter, which is on Substack. We have some really incredible content going on over there on our Substack, including an exclusive Q&A this week with Christina Baker Kline about things we don't even talk about on the show. So it's some bonus material. And we've had so many interesting author interviews recently, like Elizabeth Berg, Mary Beth Whalen, Sally Hepworth, Brent Grinder, plus a roundtable with a great giveaway that Mary Kay just did with 11 Beach Read authors.
And you definitely do not want to forget about the Friends of Fiction 2026 subscription box available exclusively through Oxford Exchange. Sign up for that for one all-in price, and the bookstore will send you 3 separate mailings, one each on my pub day, so it's shipping right now. MKA's in June and Kristen's in July. And each autograph book comes with a special, exclusive Friends and Fiction branded gift available only in this package. So visit Oxford Exchange and get yours while supplies last.
Yeah, if I want the little goodies, even I have to order the box. So
It's true.
It's
no
true.
one merch.
Nobody's exempt.
The merch committee does not give out free merch.
I know. I've tried. All right, let's welcome Christina Baker Kline to talk about the Foursome. Sean, could you bring her on, please?
Every time I listen to you two, I'm so jealous. You have the most amazing relationship, and you're so cute together. I love it so much.
Oh, thank you.
And Kristy, your book is coming out tomorrow. It's so exciting.
It's so exciting. It's so exciting. I know. Yeah. So it's great. It's great.
Yeah. The two
So
of
exciting.
you just are the May reads for me.
That's
so.
right. That's right.
It's
Well,
Patty's,
right.
you're a Patty.
I'm happy
You're
here.
like,
Thank goodness, because I'm not releasing a book around you two. I'm gonna let you take the airwaves.
Aren't you glad? Like when we're complaining to you about being stressed out, you can be like, "Not me." Or just
Oh,
kidding.
I'm always
like-
stressed out. But I'm not on the road like the two of you are right now. So, all right, Christina,
It's-
I've been ready to talk about this book for a very long while. We have been talking about this book, and then I got to read it early, and finally it is time to have a conversation about it. So for everyone out there,
I think you've been there with me through self-canceling the book, and then coming back to the book. And
I
it's been an
remember
honest-
years ago you telling me about it, and then I asked, and then you were like, yeah, I'm not writing it. And then you were writing it, and now here it is. And everybody, you saw the graphic of that beautiful cover. It's so
beautiful.
exciting. All right.
Yay.
So the Foursome is this boldly original reimagining of an astonishing true story. Two sisters in 19th century North Carolina, in your own distant relatives, who married world famous conjoined twins from Siam. So let's start from the beginning. When did you find out about this and how you were related to the wives of the conjoined twins? And what did you think when you first found out?
Oh my gosh. Well, my mother's entire family is from North Carolina and for generations.
Okay.
So this is northwestern North Carolina. My mother grew up in Gastonia, which is near Charlotte. I also have a lot of relatives in Greenville, South Carolina, and Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama. So my family is really completely Southern. And don't we all have a family genealogist, like someone in the
Yeah.
family who is really into like looking in the family tree and all that? So my cousin, who is exactly my age, we're a month apart to the day. We were best friends in childhood, best cousin buds. And she grew up to become a librarian, and she was a librarian at Duke. And we were just talking about this because she's the one who discovered this link.
Oh.
And it was like in 1990. It was a really long time ago. And she told me about it. I mean, she told all of us about it, and we saw all the stuff. Like, essentially, the relationship is that Chang and Eng married these two sisters, and their dad and our ancestor were brothers. So it's
Got it.
we're the Yates line, and then they became the Bunker line. Chang and Eng Bunker. They took a surname. They didn't have a surname when they came to America for like years. And they finally, when they moved to North Carolina, they took the surname Bunker.
Interesting.
Anyway, so I learned a long time ago, but I wasn't writing fiction set in the past when I started out. And it just was it seemed like I could not even figure out how to tell this story.
Yeah.
And bless you. And Darren Strauss, this wonderful writer, went in 26 years ago, wrote a novel. I think it was a best-selling novel called Chang and Eng. And so it seemed that it had kind of been done. But, then I started writing. As you know, Patti, it feels like every novel I write goes deeper into the past lately. So at first I was like, oh my God, I know nothing about the 1840s and 50s. And I'm not, what am I going to... But I worked for so long on The Exiles, my last novel that takes place in the 1840s and 50s. And so I had a really strong sense of what it was like to live then. And also I have a little trick in my head, which is like, just imagine the world without the internet, and that's kind of the way we live.
That's it. That's 1840.
But
Yeah, it is. The internet, electricity, cars. But so every book I've done has been more challenging. I don't want to say it's been harder, that's for sure. But I don't know. I don't want to say it's like more challenge. I'm not sure everyone would agree, but for me, it's felt like I have set myself a harder challenge. So I think it's like training for a marathon or something. I felt like I was finally ready to do this book that I had been putting off forever. But it was a very long journey because COVID happened, and then there were all kinds of conversations in the air about like the kinds of stories that people can tell. And I had just gotten a 2-book deal. My publisher was really excited about this book. And I went out to dinner with my editor, my publisher, and my agent. And I kind of was like, here are all the reasons it's complicated. And by the end of dinner, they were like, you're right. You should put this book aside.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I kind of talked them into it, which I was like, what did I just do? But I did go and work on another book for 2 years. But then 2 things happened that got me back into it. One, my genealogist cousin went off to a bunker family reunion, and she came back and she was like, these are our people. Like, you are related to these people.
It's
if
your story. I mean, if it's anyone's story to tell, it's kind of yours.
Yeah. So that was liberating to think about, like, yeah, that's true. It is at least a relative, right? And then number 2 is that I wrote The Exiles, my last book, which is about convict women from Britain who were sent to Australia on these repurposed slaving ships, essentially as breeders to have children and to populate Australia with the former convicts who were there. Crazy story. I mean, we all know something about it, but like when I started really researching it, I was like, I cannot believe this. 20% of Australians are descended from convicts for this reason. So anyway, I did that book. Isn't that crazy? And I started getting letters, emails from other writers saying, you gave me courage to write my book because you have this Aboriginal, one of my 3 central characters is an Aboriginal girl. And I was like, oh yeah, I did do that.
I already did do that.
I forgot that I did that. I mean, I knew that I did it, but somehow I hadn't had quite the same freak out about it. And also because the world was a little different and people weren't completely up in arms about some of these questions.
Right.
So I called my agent and said, I'm thinking maybe I should go back to the book. And he's like, let's not tell them. Let's just write the book.
Oh, wow.
So I just wrote the book, and I benefited. Patti knows this. My editor went to another publisher, Patti's publisher, and she's amazing and wonderful. But I was kind of out of touch. I didn't really have an editor for a while. So I just percolated along and wrote the book. And then I turned it in and it worked. I mean, we think it worked. I think it works.
It most assuredly worked.
Definitely worked.
So it was fun. And I mean, it was hard and like awful, but it was fun to get it done and to feel like I kind of wrote the book I wanted to write. I didn't compromise that.
Yeah.
But I also, I mean, look, all my books are so different from each other, but I do think they share a common style in some ways. Like, I'm really interested in the stories that have never been told by people who haven't had a voice to tell them. And I also am more interested in like really how something feels than the overlaying part. So in this novel, I just stayed very, very close to the voice of one of the sisters. And that was what I learned, something pivotal that changed my whole relationship to the book. And it led me to writing. I was writing from both sisters' perspectives, but I learned this one thing, and it led me to writing from one sister's perspective. And that changed everything. And it made it suddenly open up for me.
Oh, it's amazing. And I also think it's really good for emerging writers, which so many listen to us, to realize that not every story has a straight shot. We don't think of a story, sit down and write it, and then it's a book. I mean, it happens, there's these lightning strikes and it happens, but to hear the journey of this book, I think is really important for everyone. So
Well, I'm just so interested. I mean, you're writing here. We've got 21 children, 2 sisters, 2 marriages, 1 fused body, a country hurtling toward war. How do you even begin to decide, okay, this is going to be on the page and this is going to be off stage? Because if you've created this book that's really intimate, it doesn't feel sprawling in in the negative way. Like it doesn't feel like it feels like this really intimate novel.
I think Patti might be the opposite. I'm not sure about you, Kristy, but I write short. Like I often end up adding 100 pages to a book instead of, I think for me, this is my armchair analysis of my own psychology.
Okay.
I think
that's my job. I'm your psychoanalyst.
It would help if I had real therapy. I'm going to do my own up here.
I'm going to get my own finished first, and then you can look into that.
So my analysis is that I think I need to know I can finish. So I kind of write, and sometimes I think I can get away with not writing part of it that I don't want to write, which I never can. But it kind of gives me the illusion of having finished a draft, and then I have to go back in. So that almost always happens. And in this book, the whole second half, which is the Civil War, and it's a really deep dive into what really happened to that family during the Civil War.
Yep.
I sort of thought, well, everybody knows about the Civil War. I can just and then 3 years later, and my editor was like, no, you cannot do that. You must actually tell the story. And I was actually so intimidated because, as you guys well know, so many people are obsessed with the Civil War. They know everything about it. In fact, I had, for this book, 13 readers. I've never had anything like that before. I had sensitivity readers. I had historians. I had Civil War experts. I had,
wow.
I know. So, but it wasn't until the final read, and it wasn't even a historian. It was I think it was they actually even hired a fact checker, that one of the battles was backwards or something. It is hard to get that history exactly right. But I know people care about the history.
Yeah.
So anyway, my editor said, if you look, come on, the war actually happened. It came to their town. You have to grapple with this. So I spent a lot of time, another year, essentially writing another 100 pages and filling in that part. So I'm not going off on all these flights of fancy. They were fairly directed, but there was one scene that now is my favorite scene that I did not want to write, which is, my editor said, you have these 2 sisters, and one of them, Sally, my main character, has this kind of evolving view of the world that they live in. And her sister is staunchly part of that world and also defensive about it and engaged in it. And she said, you need to have them have a direct conflict, not just this passive aggressive stuff and the Sally's ruminating. You must put them in conflict. And I really didn't think it would work because my character's point of view is sort of the morally right one. And it just felt like it was going to be gross revisionist history, preaching to the converted, it felt like it wouldn't work. But once I started writing the scene, I was able to give Adelaide, her sister, real agency and authority in saying, look, you're a hypocrite.
Yep.
You want it both ways. You live in this system. You benefit from it. I don't see you leaving, but you could leave. You don't need to be here. Yep. And, she was absolutely right. Sally, my character, was complicit, and it needed to be articulated. So that was kind of amazing. I love my editor. Caroline Zancan is her name, and she was the editor of The Wedding People. That was this wonderful book. She's really good. She's firm but nice. So it's
But it's
It
amazing
was
that you were trying to avoid the thing that actually broke open their relationship in many ways, right? Because then they had to butt up against each other and we'll
yeah.
get to the logistics of this crazy conjoined marriage, but it's you kind of came at it as a way. Adelaide ends up in the marriage because a way to reclaim a future after a family scandal. And so we see this push and pull between the two sisters, literally, and her ambition had to be hidden inside desire to be a wife. And I'm wondering what you wanted to give Sarah and Adelaide that history has not given them. Was it voice? Was it agency?
Yeah.
Was it privacy? Tell me what your thought was about what you were actually giving them as the sisters.
Well, the amazing thing about this story, Chang and Eng's story, is that it's very written about. It's written about a lot. There are many, many books, all of which I've read. There are biographies. There are contemporaneous newspaper articles. There's a giant Wikipedia page. There are lots of other kinds of writing about them. I mentioned the novel by Darren Strauss. There have been other fictional accounts, but none of them focus on the women at all.
Mm.
And even like this fabulous biography, Inseparable, came out a few years ago. It was the cover of the New York Times Book Review. The author is a professor at Stanford. He's brilliant. It's a great book. But like many of the biographies of the brothers, well, stepping back, I had to piece together like 100-page single-spaced chronology from all my sources to see what actually happened in their daily life, because it's only glancingly mentioned in the stories of the men's lives. So I'll give you an example of one year, 1865. I realized as I was doing the chronology, and I had all these different sources. So I had the story from all these different perspectives. And also, when you do historical research, as you guys know, the facts aren't always the same. People have different versions of stories and the different dates even and all that. You have to kind of figure out which one and like going with.
And everybody thinks they're right.
Right. And everybody thinks they're right.
And the letter. Yeah.
Yeah. So true. So anyway, but I did figure out that in 1865, so Sally was pregnant. Her oldest daughter died, who was her favorite. She was in her 20s. It was so tragic. Her son was taken prisoner of war. He was fighting for the war, in the war. An infant child of hers died in the most horrific circumstances. She was very sick. The South lost the war, and they lost everything, were destitute, had no money, had no help, no workers. And her husband had to go back on the road with P.T. Barnum, whom he loathed, with his brother, leaving Sally alone on her farm with these little children, 2 dead children in 1 year, an infant, and no money and nothing. And nobody ever pointed that out in any book about the twins.
Wow.
So it was because nobody was focusing on the experience of the women. What they wrote was that Eng went back on the road after the war. They did not mention the dead children. They did not mention all the stuff that happened. So, making a timeline, I was able to really see these overlooked lives and what it was really like.
Overlooked lives. I like that a lot. A lot of your books have done that.
I was going to say, you write a lot about overlooked lives.
Yeah,
I
really
many
like
stories out there that are so where the women are completely avoided, and it's amazing to see them kind of brought to life. Okay, so I have to ask you.
Yes.
I'm sure you're going to get asked a lot about this book. So there's obviously this physical reality of conjoinment. So what did the physical reality of conjoinment allow you to explore about identity, and not just about, who belongs to whom, but where one self ends and the other begins?
I kind of thought you were going somewhere else.
I'm going to Nat. We're going there after.
Because Kristy, that's a very philosophical question. And let me think. No, that's such a good question. I love that question because here's the thing. I mean, all marriages are already complicated, right? I mean, you're married to someone, your moods change. I mean, Dave and I are moving this week, and we're at one point we were just like, we need to just be kind to each other and not snap at each other.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard, it's stressful.
So stressful.
And it's so stressful. So what I wanted to do is to make the lives in this book utterly ordinary. Meaning, I wanted people to be able to put themselves in the place of either of these sisters and say, this situation that seemed so insane to me, like I could never imagine, is actually imaginable. Like, you might actually be able to understand what it's like to be in that situation. So yes, it's crazy that you're married to someone who's attached to another human being and can never be apart from them. And yet all of us have, like, I should say many of us, those of us who are with a partner, are in relation to their own relatives as well. And people have complicated sibling relationships. So I think there's a little glimmer of that for each of us in our own way.
Oh, wow.
You know, with that said, so there's a line in my book, even that Sally says, which is, even the most extraordinary life is ordinary when you're living it. You know, I just wanted to think, day to day to day, this is normal, their situation. So if this is what it is, then what does it actually feel like to live that life? And keep in mind, these women were quite sheltered. They were 19 and 20 when they met the twins. They did not have much experience at all. And they didn't really know, this was the only marriage they knew. So in a way, it was their normal. But it is strange, I know. But it's, you know, and moving along slightly, Kristy, to what I think you were also getting at, which is, how did this all happen? And how did they have 11 children and 10 children? That's so crazy. The men have talked about that they practiced something called they called it alternate mastery, meaning that if you were in the home of the other sister, so the men went back and forth every 3 days to the other sister's house, the other wife's house. And when if Aang was in Chang's house, he was supposed to be quiet. He was supposed to not make any decisions. He was supposed to be there as a passive observer. And that was the way they lived. So, and there's all kinds of writing actually about, like, speculating about how this all happened. My feeling, and what I wanted to show in the book, is that I think, look, it was a conservative society. They were church-going people. There are all kinds of reasons that I think they did pretty much adhere to that. But I also think that feelings can be unruly, and you can't always predict how you're going to feel about something. So I wanted to show the complexity of what it actually felt like. And also, you know, Sally was so reluctant about it at first that I kind of felt like, for the reader, it was a way to get used to the idea before, you know,
that was a really smart kind of like lead in, because I mean, as the reader, you're like, I mean, it's definitely, I mean,
that moment when Sally is standing in her room, because the twins, and she's standing there and she's like, what am I doing? And this is crazy.
How did I get roped into this? And there's this moment too where he describes to her this ability to leave in your mind, to almost disassociate.
Right.
And
yes,
we've all done that or maybe we all haven't, but we've disassociated in a stressful situation or whatever. And that made sense to me. This kind of, okay, like, that's Chang, I'm Aang, but I'm not there right now.
Yeah, they talked about that. The brothers have talked about that on the record. And so I was able to use that kind of information about, you know, I think to exist with someone, imagine, like, aren't you on your last nerve sometimes with your sibling or with someone? I mean, or your best friend even. Like, imagine being stuck with them and you absolutely can never leave. So yes, they talked about how they would just cut off and be somewhere else in their minds. And other conjoined twins have also talked about that. There are 2 sets of conjoined twins right now who are young women, both in their 20s, I believe. And I think 2 of them are married, and then one calls herself asexual, one has a boyfriend, I believe. And they've talked a lot and they do YouTube videos, both of the sets of twins. One had a reality series, one of the sets. So I learned a lot from that.
Okay.
And I learned a lot from documentaries about polygamous Mormon people. There are a lot, but there's one in particular that's great. It's a BBC documentary, and it is so funny because it's like a BBC presenter's voice. He's like, and here we see the Mormon polygamists in their natural habitat, going about their daily lives. I was like
they're kangaroos.
Yeah, exactly. And so, they're interviewed very earnestly, and it's like quite an intellectual program. And so you get a lot of granular detail, not only about like the logistics of the situation, but also like how the women really felt about each other living so close. In my novel, Sarah and Adelaide live together they're in one house for a while. And then it just becomes untenable. They cannot do this anymore. And they build a second house. But I did learn a lot from listening to the wives talking through what it was like to actually have another woman, and eventually another woman too, come in to your home.
And your bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they are your distant relatives. And the book, of course, shows us who they were. Did you think a lot at all about what your family lineage and legacy in this, like what it meant, like when you talk to your genealogist, librarian cousin, and you think about the family, did you think about the family differently at all?
I think that the direct Bunker descendants wrestle with this a lot. And I've just finished putting together a slideshow that's about 20, 25 minutes, I guess. And it has a whole segment about my interviewing the relatives in the present day. I interviewed 4 of them, I guess.
Okay.
And it's funny because the Chang and Eng sides do have very different kind of stories and interpretations. And but the truth is, Adelaide, by all accounts, was this beautiful, charismatic, kind of manipulative, very smart, very savvy woman. And her sister Sarah, the one who's my character, was sort of dragged by the nose into this situation. And she was shy and a little plain, and she was not the alpha in this, and nor was the partner she's with. So the 2 dashing, attractive ones, decide that they want to get married. And it would have been bigamy if they had done that without involving the sister. So they had to convince the brother and the sister in real life, which is crazy to think about. But there are other things too that the family talks about, like Sarah was kind of messier and like a much less attentive mother. Adelaide was kind of like Kate Middleton. She had it all together. Her kids were always dressed well. She always had them at the schoolhouse on time, and they were clean and well-behaved. And Sarah was a little shambolic and messy.
I bet we'd be friends with her.
I just had so much fun writing her because she hadn't drunk the Kool-Aid, really. She was the one who was just skeptical, but also she allowed it to happen. She kind of fell backwards into it.
Yeah.
And so then it was very fun to have her awakening in all these different ways.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so we talked at the beginning of the show a little bit about the Friends of Fiction Substack. So now we need to talk about yours. So everyone needs to go right now and find Christina Baker Kline's Substack. But you wrote about this book taking longer than expected and becoming deeper, stranger, and more layered because of that delay. So tell us about that.
I really think it did. I think it would have been a very different book if I had finished it, if I had done my 2-year schedule and finish the book. It's been 6 years. It's a long time. It just percolated so much. And I also, here's what I was talking about, really. I think that the country has changed a lot. COVID happened. That was huge, as we know. A lot of people were isolated. But also just the politics of the country and the divisiveness and the way that people in the same family have conflict about what they believe. It made the Civil War era feel very alive to me, because those divisions have repercussions today. And as we've seen, I mean, I went to grad school at UVA, and, you know, when Charlottesville happened, I knew people who were, you know, down there. In fact, I did a speech the next week, and there was another huge protest down there. And so, you know, it's not really ancient history. And I would actually say that people don't change, laws change. And the laws have changed. But there are still people today, I have no doubt, who, if this system existed, would just exist within it, because it's the status quo and that's the way it is. You know, we all have stories in our family, many stories. When you were asking about this story, it is truly the most strange one. But I grew up with a story about my mother's grandfather, father's father. He and his brother fought against each other in the Civil War, and it tore apart the family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, one was a Union soldier, one was a Confederate soldier. And, you know, there are lots of stories like that too. So it was a really fraught period, but writing it during the last 4 years gave it a different emphasis, perhaps, and flavor, I think, than it would have otherwise had. And creating rounded characters in both, you know, on both sides, and also to show how gray the area was for so many people.
Yeah.
Well, because they were living in it. Like, we have hindsight.
Right.
People are going to have hindsight on what we're living through today.
Right.
And they were in the middle of it, in the milieu that they were in. They only knew what they knew.
Right.
And so we forget that we have this advantage from the other side. So I love that I'm glad it took you longer so that you went there. I'm glad.
Well, it was a real journey. It was hard to do that. But, you know, we'll see what happens. But my sense is that the times have changed again a bit. And I don't know. But my sense is that there's a little more breathing room for different kinds of stories.
I hope so.
We'll see.
I really
hope so too. Okay, well, everybody who's out there watching and listening, I mean, we know you're going to want to do this, so I don't even need to encourage you, but we encourage you to rush out and buy your copies of the Foursome. The perfect place to do that is the Friends and Fiction shop on bookshop.org. You'll not only be getting it at a discount, but all your purchases there support our show, our guests, and indie bookstores nationwide. So, this is amazing, y'all. Bookshop has raised an astounding $50 million for indie bookstores. So shop there online when you can. And when you can't get out to an indie in person, it's a great alternative.
And it's why we started the show in the first place.
Sure.
So, Christina, before we let you go, we're going to do a lightning round. You ready? And you actually don't have to be too fast at it, but you ready?
All right. Go, Kristy.
Yeah. So you're so good at seeing the dynamics of family, home, and what happens behind closed doors. What fascinated you most about the day-to-day domestic reality of this family that readers might not expect?
What fascinated me about it was, imagine having 10 children or 11 children. All the different personalities. When I mapped out, I mean, and you have to be of childbearing age, so you don't have that long to do it.
Right.
When I mapped it out, you were just always having a baby, you know, giving birth, raising another toddler. It was logistically so complicated, and to have 21 of them as essentially extended siblings was quite amazing. This is related. The brothers knew from the beginning when they got married that they wanted to have many children because they wanted, and by the way, the polygamous father in the Mormon documentary says this exact same thing.
Oh, what?
He said, I want to create a community of human beings for whom my lifestyle is normal.
Oh,
So the more children I have, the larger my community of people who believe in what I do or am and understand it. So I thought that was fascinating. And one of the brothers said that somewhere similar too. And that was kind of a guiding principle for me, that the brothers wanted to create this community of people.
that's amazing.
It's also kind of dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
let's start a cult, let you know. All right, who in
Totally.
this foursome is the best keeper of the peace, and who is most likely to quietly set the match to the feuds? All four.
Well, in a way, it's so easy. I think that Chang, it was very volatile historically.
Yeah.
He was such a charmer, but also, as sometimes goes hand in hand, also a drinker. And he would drink too much and, get kind of a little bit crazy. And also he was just very opinionated and quite loud about it. And Aang was always the peacemaker. I would say the same is true of Adelaide and Sarah, that Adelaide was the more volatile one and Sarah was kind of the peacemaker. But Aang and Chang had no choice. They couldn't be in different rooms. So they had to do that in the moment all the time. And Aang got really sick of it, actually. He was tired of kind of taking care of Chang. And then it's no giveaway because you could see this on any, short description of the twins, but Chang essentially killed them both because he lived recklessly and drank too much and had a stroke. And when he died, then Aang was going to die too very soon, and he did. So
Talk about being tied together.
I'm sorry, this is not my official next question, but was something that you said really pinged me. So if Aang was drinking too much, Chang was drinking too much. Which one was?
Yeah.
So could one drink too much without the other one being intoxicated?
It's so weird, Kristy. That is a great question. There's a part of the book where I'm like, if one tasted a lemon, the other one winced. But no is the weird thing. Aang did not get drunk. There were all these physiological things about them. And by the way that they ended up in North Carolina is that a doctor from Wilkes County named James Calloway came to their show in New York. A lot of doctors went to their shows for this exact reason. They wanted to understand how they functioned.
Okay.
So they were fascinated. So this doctor came to the show and he invited them to come hunt and fish on his property, and they fell in love with it. But there are all these weird ways that they were completely
separate,
and then separate or together.
Okay.
But they did share a liver, which is weird. I mean, that's when they did an autopsy. Finally, they discovered that they shared this liver. So.
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay. Well, so my real question, is there anything else that you want us to know or understand about this foursome before we let?
I think I just want readers to know that it's not going to be this, that the book is not prurient or salacious. I think that, as I said, I think some people might be wary that it's going to be a little strange. But I think you're going to find that it's very easy to imagine yourself in the shoes of this woman, and that it's fascinating to live in those shoes and to see what that life is like.
So cool.
I hope.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you feel about telling us what you're working on next?
I have just started this project that goes back even a few centuries.
You keep falling back and back and
I know. The next one is going to be contemporary, I swear.
Sure.
But it actually has to do with the founding of America and with the Mayflower. And so I'm just getting started, but it's very fun. That's awesome.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Okay, so now it's time for the sad goodbye because we know you need to get on with your day and you have an incredible tour coming up. So tell us about where listeners and viewers can find out more about your tour and how they can connect with you online, besides at your fabulous Substack.
Instagram, I posted my tour and it's pinned at the top, and I'm going all over the United States.
Yeah.
I think I'm on tour for 5 weeks, long time. But it'll be really fun. And I'm excited to be in various places. It's kind of all a whirl. I know, Kristy, you're about to embark on all of that too.
Yes, but mine's only 3 weeks. I don't know. 5 is, I used to do that. And then COVID kind of like, changed everything so much. And I haven't been on one that long since. And it, whew,
I know. I'm going to take some vitamin D.
Yeah. You definitely need to do that. Well, Christina, we wish you well on your tour. And we're so excited for everyone to read this book. And thank you so much for joining us. And thanks for being with us on Friends of Fiction.
Thank you so much for having me.
Christina, thank you for being so honest about the hard parts of writing this too. I think it's important. And, the work to get to such a beautiful book like this isn't for the faint of heart. I can tell you that. So, all right, everyone, be sure to tune in next week when Mary Kay and I will welcome Catherine Stockett, author of The Help, 17 years later, to discuss her new novel, The Calamity Club. That show will air live on the Friends in Fiction Facebook page and YouTube channel on Wednesday, May 13th at 7 p.m. and our podcast 2 days later on Friday, May 15th.
Thanks to everyone for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Friends and Fiction, hosted by New York Times bestselling authors Mary Kay Andrews, Patti Callahan Henry, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Kristen Harmel. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, subscribe to our Substack newsletter, and catch us on Facebook and YouTube, where a new episode of our show airs every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can also listen to Friends in Fiction wherever you get your podcasts. Find out about all this and more at friendsandfiction.com. We're so glad you're here.